9:02, so we will go ahead and we will get started. I want to welcome you. I want to start our meeting this morning just by congratulating all of our best places to work in Kentucky folks. So that was a pretty exciting night, and we have several in the group. So congratulations to everyone. We'll start this morning with, I don't have any big announcements other than um, reminding everyone to sign up for Kentucky SHRM if you haven't done it, because it sounds like the lineup is going to be incredible. So with that, I will turn it over to our board members and our chair of our committees. And if they have a report, great. And if not, then we will go ahead and move on. Sarah, do you have anything to report for the group this morning?
Morning. Thanks, Melissa. Yes, we have a couple exciting speakers lined up for July and August. They are both on the West Coast, so we will be asking chapter members to maybe shift time a little bit so that we are not asking those folks on the West Coast to present at 6 a.m. their time. So I just wanted to bring that up ahead of time. We have those speakers. Dr. Michael Montoya will be talking to us about communication, and Justin Grooms about DEI. One other thing I wanted to mention is if any chapter members have a topic that they'd especially like to hear about, please reach out and contact me so we can make that happen. I will track somebody down on LinkedIn to present on your topic that you're interested in. So just let me know what you'd like to hear about. Thanks, Melissa.
Thanks, Sarah. And thank you for all of your hard work that's going into finding us good speakers this year. I appreciate you. Rachel, do you have anything to report?
Yes, ma'am. The only thing I have to report is our June chapter meeting will be an in-person event as every year. That will be on June 12th at the CFSB Community Room in Benton, Kentucky. And we will have Miss Amy Tooley from Men and Women in Leadership speaking to us and conducting from you guys' feedback, our chapter feedback from the annual conference. Everybody really liked the networking portion and wanted more time to do so. So Miss Amy will be leading our networking event that day. We will have a new member reception starting at 1. So everyone's welcome. That's just to welcome our new members who do come. So all chapter members are welcome for that. And then our chapter meeting will begin at 2.
Great, thank you. How do we RSVP for that meeting?
Mary Ann will be sending out an Eventbrite link for that. We were just getting it settled in and finalized this morning, so that should be going out, and I'm sure it will be in the newsletter every week leading up as well.
It's
Great.
also in the chat. The link is in the chat.
Perfect.
Oh, I didn't
Thank
see
you,
that.
Mary
Thank you,
Ann.
Mary Ann. Thank you, Rachel. Alan, do you have anything to report for the group this morning?
Sure, I'd be happy to give a quick report. So, just two things. One on certification. The first is that the Kentucky SHRM virtual prep course. So that is we are actively taking registrations for the fall. That deadline to register is August 8th, and it is completely virtual. So it is from 5 to 7 Central on Wednesday nights, starting September 3rd through November 19th. And don't forget that as a Four Rivers SHRM member, if you have never sat for the exam or never done the prep course before, you are eligible to receive a 50% reimbursement on the cost of this program. So it's one of your more premier benefits for being a member of Four Rivers SHRM. So if you would like more information on that, please feel free to email me. I'll put my email in the chat. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. As far as the financial report for the chapter, so we have for the month of April, we had taken in about $1,300 in income, and then for the whole year, we are about $18,633. As a reminder, the bulk of our income does come from your dues. And then the expenses for the month of April, we spent about $6,400, and most of that was on the spring conference, some of those invoices coming in. And then for the whole year, our expenses are about $10,800. Most of that being insurance and then conference expenses. So for the month, we spent about 5,000 more than what we brought in, but for the year, we are ahead by about $7,800. So your chapter is performing very strongly. So very proud of that, and thank you all for your contributions for it. Again, happy to answer any questions that you have. My email will be in the chat.
Thank you, Alan. I appreciate you. Catherine, do you have anything to report on Kentucky State Council or as past president? I think, am I the only one who can't hear Catherine?
I can't hear her
I
yet.
cannot hear her now.
She's not muted. Oh, she just muted herself.
Okay, I don't think your audio is performing. Okay, with that, we will move on to our membership chair, Ray Hall.
Good morning, everyone. I do want to report we currently have 111 active members. If you are not currently a member of Fort River SHRM and want to take advantage of joining our membership in this great group of people and taking advantage of some of the things that even Alan spoke about, now is a great time. Part of registration and RSVPing for the in-person meeting in June. You can also join us and just click and pay that invoice online with your registration. So if you're interested in that, I will put my email also in the chat if you have any questions regarding membership. And thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Ray. Paige, are you on here and do you have anything you'd like to report? I don't see Paige, but okay. With that, Deb, do you have anything you'd like to report? I can't see.
I will just see if I can get my video on. I'll just report that our scholarship deadline has closed, and so currently we're under review for the applicant, and hopefully we'll have a winner to report to you all in the next meeting.
Wonderful. Thank you, Deb. I just want to point out, Catherine just put into the chat in case anyone did not see it. No wonder she was frustrated we couldn't hear her. She's excited to report that we were notified Friday that we were awarded the 2024 Platinum Excel Award. And thank you to Catherine for all of her hard work in that. It required some extra diligence this year, and I appreciate her and all of her efforts. So congratulations to everyone on that. That's very exciting. I don't know, Terry, are you on here and do you have anything to report? I don't see her, I don't hear her. And finally, last but not least, Mary Ann, as our communications chair, do you have anything to report?
Good morning, everyone. I'm sorry that we had a slow start this morning, but I had a tree fall in my backyard right as I was trying to start the program. So it's been a little exciting this morning. You will receive the link to the charcuterie conversation and clarity event that we're having in June is in the chat. Right after this email, everyone will get an invitation from Eventbrite. Feel free to join. Join us for that event. We're excited to be able to offer that in Benton in June, on June 12th. The CRU codes, the CEU codes will be also put in the chat at near the end of our presentation. And as always, any new updates or anything going on will be in our newsletter. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mary Ann. And with that, I believe that concludes, unless anyone else has anything that we need to discuss this morning, I believe that concludes the business portion of our meeting. And with that, I will turn it over to you, Sarah, to introduce our guests.
Great, thank you. Today we have with us Matt Eddy speaking to us about the considerations with remote employees. A little bit about Matt. Matt has been with the law firm Whitlow, Robert, Houston, and Straub since 2019 and focuses his practice on the areas of employment law, maritime law, and commercial litigation. Matt earned a bachelor's degree in English from Georgetown University and a Juris Doctorate from Vanderbilt School of Law. He's been rated by Super Lawyers as a rising star in 2023 through 2025. And fun fact, I did a little research on this because I was like, what is Super Lawyers? It has a very rigorous selection process. Only 2.5% of lawyers are selected to receive the Rising Star designation. So it's a big deal. Matt's involved in several community organizations and enjoys spending time with his wife, Caroline, and their 3 children. Welcome, Matt. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here with you all. Let's see. I will see if I can share my screen here.
You are now a co-host, Matt.
All right, I'm official. All right, am I sharing the presentation now? Can you all see it?
Yes.
Perfect. Let's see if I can get it on the slideshow. There we go. Okay. I will admit it's been a while. I'm used to using Teams now, so I'm going back to Zoom. It feels like going back to I haven't been on here since COVID probably. So, but I think I've shaken the rust off. I think I should be good to go. Thank you for that great introduction. My name is Matt Eddy. I'm a partner over here at Whitlow Roberts, focusing in employment law and maritime and commercial litigation. Not going to be talking about barges today. We'll just focus on employment law. I'll say the catalyst for this presentation came when I was doing some research for a client and discovered that remote employees are generally subject to the laws of the city and the state where they're physically located and perform work. So this raises a large host of questions regarding what laws apply to your remote employees. We're not going to cover all those questions today, but hopefully we'll hit the main and big issues. I've divided this presentation into two parts. The first is a survey of some employment law issues that can differ from state to state. So I'll go through some of these bigger employment law issues and show you, okay, here's how Kentucky law handles it. But here's something you should be aware of because look, here's a couple other states that handle it a little bit differently. So say you have an employee that goes to work remotely in Illinois or California. Well, be aware they do things a little bit differently over there. So hopefully you can look into that before you have that person go and start working remotely from there. So that's the first half of this. And by no means are we going to walk out of here being an expert in employment law in all 50 states. Hopefully this will just kind of spark a conversation maybe with you and your in-house counsel or outside counsel, or at least give you an idea that, okay, these are some things I need to be aware of going forward. The second half of the presentation is going to be, now that we have these issues in mind, what are some provisions that we really need to have in a remote work policy? Once again, we're not going to cover every single provision you should have in that remote work policy, but the main points that you will want to have in there, if you already have a remote work policy, or if you don't have one, hopefully this will inspire you to go have a conversation with in-house counsel or outside counsel of drafting a remote work policy that covers your remote workers. So with that all said, I'll get into it here. As was mentioned before, I'm a partner over at Whitlow Roberts, Houston and Straub here in Paducah. We're a full service law firm working in Kentucky, Illinois, and Tennessee. And we actually just opened up an office in Murray, Kentucky. So that's exciting. We're excited about that. Oh, something I should say too. Although I would love to say that I graduated from Georgetown University, it actually is Georgetown College in Georgetown, Kentucky. Just to clear that up. That is not the first, nor will be the last time that happened, but I figure I probably should. Not that Georgetown College is lesser than. Go Tigers, great school, but just wanted to clear that up. But anyway, yeah, that's a picture of our office in Paducah here. Another disclaimer for you all. As a lawyer, we love disclaimers and warnings and cautionary statements. The information provided in this presentation is for informational and discussion purposes only. It's not to be construed as legal advice, nor does it establish any attorney-client relationship. All right, now we got that out of the way. Time for the fun stuff. Something to think about going into this, obviously, we all are probably very much aware COVID-19 changed the way we work and continues to change the way we work. This is an article I found, just some statistics coming out of 2024. I haven't been able to find something as robust for 25 yet, but some summaries of some key facts, like according to the Pew Research Center, around 22 million employed adults ages 18 and over in the US work from home all the time. That's equal to roughly 14% of all employed adults. Another stat on here, just over 1/3 of workers in the US who can work remotely do so all the time, while 41% are at least part-time remote on a hybrid setup. Anecdotally, I feel like that's a little more common as the hybrid setup now. I hear a lot of people talking about I go to the office 2 or 3 days a week. But anyway, those are just some stats showing that this is still a problem since COVID. It does not appear to be, well, not a problem, still something that's going on since COVID, and probably going to be a part of our work life going forward for as far as I can see right now. Preliminary concerns that you should be thinking about if you have somebody who is wanting to work remotely. Number one would be, are they an existing employee or are they a new employee? If they're a new employee, it could be a little simpler because you likely have some sort of onboarding process where you show them a bunch of your policies, and in there, hopefully, will be a remote work policy, and they'll sign off saying, okay, I acknowledge I've seen this, I understand what's expected of me. If it's an existing employee, might be a little trickier. You might need to enter an agreement or at least have some sort of memorandum of understanding with them showing what's expected of them when they're working remotely. A second preliminary question is going to be, is this a hybrid arrangement or a full-time remote position? This can get a little bit tricky as to what state laws are going to apply, because you're going to be looking at, okay, where is this employee spending most of their time when they're working? Is it in this remote state or is it in the office? That's another question that could be you're going to need to dive into. For today. For purposes of this presentation, we're going to operate under more of a general situation of somebody who wants to work remotely from another state. We're not going to dive as much into these rabbit holes. It can make things a little complicated, get us in the weeds pretty quick. So our situation for today, we have a worker. This guy looks a little stressed out. He wants to try working remotely from home. So he comes in to your office and says, okay, I want to work remotely. What do I need to do? Now what? What's going to happen now? Well, first question probably is going to pop in your mind is, where is this person going to be working? Specifically, what state? This question is going to come up later, but for now, we're going to say, okay, what state are you working from? As I said before, remote employees are generally subject to the laws of the city and state where they're physically located and perform work. So it's going to be pretty important here for us to know what state they're working from. Just some important considerations that do get into state law, but they're kind of outside of my practice. Number one is going to be state and local income tax withholding. I'm not a tax attorney, but I do know generally an employer has an income tax withholding obligation for the jurisdiction where services are performed by each of its own employees. That being said, I'm aware Kentucky has some reciprocal agreements with certain other states, but altogether you need to consult with either a tax attorney or CPA or your in-house counsel. That's going to be one of your first questions. Another question that's going to come up is workers' compensation. Like I said, I am employment law, but not workers' compensation. I do work with a few workers' comp attorneys. Generally, employers must have workers' compensation insurance coverage where the employee's work is localized. That's in quotes here because that's going to be a legal buzzword and have its own analysis. And then lastly, unemployment insurance. Working remotely can affect where wages need to be reported and unemployment taxes due. So that's another thing I'm not going to talk so much about today, but another thing to be aware of for sure. Okay, so now we'll get into some of these employment law issues and how they work outside Kentucky, kind of compare them to what we're dealing with here in Kentucky. We're talking about an hourly position. One of the first questions that's going to come up is, what's the minimum wage in that state? Federal minimum wage is $7.25 an hour. Of course, states can increase that number. It could be different wherever this employee is going. So, for example, Kentucky and Tennessee, they stick to the federal rate of $7.25. Illinois is different, $15 an hour. Missouri also different, $13.75. And these numbers, a lot of times will change from year to year, so it's something to keep an eye on. California, $16.50 per hour, dude. It is a little bit higher out there. And also keep in mind, there's exceptions to this. Certain healthcare positions actually require higher than that. So want to keep an eye on that as well. Rest breaks, another common employment law issue. Federal law doesn't necessarily require meal or break periods. Short breaks of 5 to 20 minutes are considered compensable, and you need to consider those when you're calculating overtime under the Fair Labor Standards Act. Meal periods lasting at least 30 minutes are not considered work time. Kentucky gets a little more specific. You may already be familiar with this. 1 10-minute break for every 4 hours worked. 1 lunch break, no sooner than 3 hours after shift begins, no later than 5 hours after shift begins. But if you go outside Kentucky, things can be a little different. For example, Indiana and Missouri, there's no state law regarding those rest periods. And of course, rest breaks can be another tricky issue. If you have somebody that's working remotely, you probably need to have some sort of policy, because you're not going to have a supervisor standing near them, seeing and making sure they're taking these breaks. But another issue to be aware of. Paid sick leave. We're probably all familiar that in Kentucky and Tennessee, paid sick leave is not required under state law. Illinois as of 2024, has a specific statute, Paid Leave for All Workers Act, that requires employers to provide employees with up to 5 days or 40 hours of paid leave during a 1-year period. This is actually even broader too than sick leave. This doesn't have to be for illness. It can be paid leave for any reason. California, it is more specified sick leave. An employee who has worked for an employer full-time, part-time, or temporarily for at least 30 days is entitled to paid sick leave. Sick leave accrues at the rate of 1 hour per every 30 hours worked, begins on the first day of employment, and they can start using that on the 90th day of employment. And employers must provide at least 5 days or 40 hours of paid leave during a 1-year period. Parental leave. This handsome fella is actually my son, Silas. He turned 1-year-old yesterday. So this picture is several months old, but obviously past year, parental leave has been on my mind. Kentucky, there's none required. We follow the Family and Medical Leave Act, FMLA. If you're in HR, you're probably pretty familiar with this. 12 weeks of unpaid job protected leave per year. Tennessee, for example, comparatively it's a little bit different. Long story short, they basically add another month. So it's 4 months for the purpose of adoption, pregnancy, childbirth, nursing of an infant. Runs concurrently with FMLA and may be with or without pay at discretion of the employer. Washington and California are kind of similar. There's not necessarily a requirement, but employees can apply. For example, in Washington, it's a program called Paid Family and Medical Leave Benefits, the PFML program administered by the Washington Employment Security Department. California also has a paid parental leave program through the state to which employees can apply. So a little bit different from Kentucky, not necessarily a requirement, but employees have that option to apply for these benefits through the state. Drug testing. Now, drug testing could be probably a presentation on its own. Today, I'm going to focus purely on, for this slide, on cannabis. That's kind of come up more recently. Kentucky, especially, considering that medical cannabis is now legal. However, employers may still test employees and then take action based on a positive result. Comparatively, Illinois, where recreational cannabis has been legalized, employers need to be a little more careful about their drug policies. They can implement a drug-free workplace policy that's enforced through random drug testing that is, one, reasonable and 2, non-discriminatory. You're probably recognizing that reasonable and non-discriminatory kind of sound like vague words here. These are legal buzzwords that are coming straight out of case law from Illinois federal courts. So it'd be a good idea to get with your in-house or outside legal counsel if you're trying to adjust your drug policies, your testing policies, so they can do some comparisons. Okay, how have courts handled this in the past? Let's make sure that we're mitigating our risk here as much as possible of somebody possibly bringing a discrimination lawsuit for being tested for using legal recreational cannabis. California, another example, their state laws of 2024 prohibits discrimination based on cannabis use outside of the workplace. This is a kind of a tricky situation as well. They technically prohibit tests that are for non-psychoactive marijuana metabolites. I'm not a scientist. I could not explain to you exactly what that means in English, but I do know in layman terms, these metabolites are stored in the body for extended periods of time. In other words, what we're saying here is California is prohibiting tests like hair or urine tests that aren't going to be able to pinpoint when exactly this person used cannabis. So there's no way for them to know, did you use it right before coming to work? Were you under the influence at work? Or did you use it a week ago outside work in a legal way? So they're trying to, in California, prohibit discrimination against the use of cannabis off the job and away from the workplace. You're probably asking yourself at this point, okay, well, how in the world are you going to test somebody if you can't do a urine test or something like that? That is still they're trying to figure it out. One way is an impairment test, which is kind of interesting, where they use a tablet, and it's a thing where the person needs to tap certain things, and hopefully it can tell whether this person is impaired at that time. Another way, which you'll see in the bottom right corner of the slide here, are actually breathalyzer tests for psychoactive THC. That's still in research and development. I'm not sure, how well that works yet, but it could be a game changer, I think, in the future. Anti-discrimination laws, something that we're probably familiar with in Kentucky. Kentucky Civil Rights Act mimics Title VII, the Civil Rights Act, the federal law, and the American Disabilities Act. So it's going to follow what we call those protected classes, prohibiting discrimination against race, color, religion, national origin, sex, or disability. Those are those protected classes from the federal law, kind of the baseline here. And what can change when we go to other states is that they may add on additional protected classes. So, for example, if we're talking about Illinois, they've added on some additional protected classes, including ancestry, marital status, protective order status, which, if we're talking about protective orders, that's usually in a domestic violence situation, military status, citizenship status, work authorization status, and arrest and conviction records in certain circumstances. And then beyond those, this year, there was a statute that adds on some further protection in employment situations for reproductive health decisions and employees with family responsibilities. Family responsibilities, another one of those terms that comes straight out of the statute, seems a little vague. Basically, what they're talking about there is actual or perceived provision of personal care to a family member. So an employee who's also serving as a caregiver to somebody in their family, basically. Some other comparisons: California added a protected class for sexual orientation, gender expression / identity, and other ones. Indiana added on the class for ancestry. Indiana's an interesting situation. Certain cities and some counties actually prohibit discrimination based on sexual orientation by ordinance. So for example, Bloomington, Lafayette, West Lafayette, Fort Wayne, and some other areas all have ordinances prohibiting discrimination for those classes. So you can't always just rely on the state law. Sometimes you also have to be aware of even the city and county level. Missouri also added a particular class for ancestry. Okay, so those were, like I said, that was the first half, kind of going through a survey of, all right, here's these very common employment law issues that pop up. Here's how we normally deal with them in Kentucky, how the Kentucky law works. But we should be aware that it can change when we leave Kentucky, go to another state. Now, having all those kind of issues in mind, let's come back and look at our remote work policy. What are some kind of must-have provisions that if you get a chance to look at your policy, maybe get with your in-house counsel, some things you want to make sure are in there, or if you don't have a policy and you have remote workers, it's a good starting point, hopefully, for that policy that you're going to need to draft. Good place to start is just the procedure and logistics of things. Employee probably should submit a request to work remotely in writing. And then, so you're going to want to have some sort of form for that probably. And then an employer will then accept that request and determine, one, whether the position is eligible, and then two, whether that employee can effectively perform their duties remotely. And as with everything in the employment world, you really need to ensure you're consistent with this policy, with what positions are eligible and how you execute those procedures for deciding that an employee can perform those duties remotely. An easy example, you might have somebody who's a janitor. Well, that position is not eligible because they need to be there in person to clean and do all the different things a janitor does. Something that might get a little more complicated could be somebody that works in IT. I know we have an outside vendor that they're not on site, but we can call them and say we're having some sort of problem, and then they can do their magical IT things and log into my computer and fix whatever needs to be fixed, and they can do that all remotely. However, maybe in your workplace, you have somebody that needs to be on site because they have to literally be there to switch out monitors and cords and do some different things that are hands-on. So that could be an example of something that could be a little more complicated, you need to put a little more thought into that. Here are some just kind of caution statements that should be in the policy. One, remote work is not guaranteed. Nobody's entitled to it. Remote work is not a substitute for dependent care, and the remote position will continue to be evaluated with scheduled check-ins to ensure that it's beneficial for all parties. So basically, this is saying, just because we've agreed to remote work doesn't mean we're both stuck with it. We can have regular check-ins, maybe have, a time when we do our review sessions with the employee, making sure that it's working for all parties. Something else that should be included as well, the employee must submit a notice in advance if they wish to return to working on site. Just because, but they could be working, for a few months from home, and then now they want to come back. Well, by this point, you might not have room for them. So you're going to need to get some advance notice to saying, okay, just logistically, do we have office space for this person to come back if they want to come back? Employee must follow employer's IT remote work policy. Perhaps that's part of the remote work policy we're talking about now, or maybe IT has its own policy that kind of gets into this. Some different considerations, process and procedures for gaining remote access to the network. Maybe you save stuff to certain drives, or either the Microsoft drives or some sort of online on the cloud space. How all that's going to work, want to have that written out. Equipment requirements. We're talking about computer, high-speed internet, phone, all those sort of things that need to be in line with whatever your IT people are requiring on site. So make sure that all the software and everything works well. And kind of going along with that, if one day something will go wrong, because we all know technology, something always goes wrong. What happens if there's interruption in internet service, or you lose power, or any of those things? You're going to want to have some sort of plan laid out where, okay, if if I lose my internet service, I'm going to contact a supervisor, or if it goes for this long, at a certain point, I'm going to report to the office, or I'm going to report somewhere else where I can gain internet service and continue to get my work done. You also want to have something in there saying employees responsible for taking care of employer's equipment. If the employer is providing a computer or any other sort of equipment to them, the equipment is for business purposes only. And this is also a good place to reference other policies you hopefully will have already in your handbook, talking about email or voicemail monitoring or the proper use of equipment, all those sorts of things. This is something that comes up quite a bit, actually. It's reimbursement of expenses. You have somebody that wants to work remotely. Sometimes that can take a little bit of money. They buy some different equipment. They, are using more energy on their electric bill, or they need a higher speed internet service, whatever it is. They could end up requiring some expenses. Kentucky and Tennessee, there's no requirement under state law for reimbursing those expenses, but some other states do that differently. Washington, there's not a state law, but there's an ordinance that says employers need to reimburse for expenses in direct consequence of the discharge of the employee's duties. That's sort of legalese, but it's broad, as you can probably imagine. And a lot of things could fall within that. Illinois is the same way. They actually have a statute, a similar language, where there could be some circumstances where the employer would be on the hook for reimbursing those expenses. And I'll say, this is something that should not be taken lightly. A couple of years ago, there were class action suits against Amazon and Wells Fargo regarding expenses for things like cell phone and internet connections, supplies, and even a portion of utility bills. So this is definitely something you want to have clear, laid out in a policy, how you're going to handle it, and then be aware of if there's any state law that you need to be abiding by wherever this employee might be going. So we talked about where will you be working in regards to the state. Now we're going to be talking even more specifically, where will you be working in terms of your workspace, your house, maybe one of those group work sites where you can sign up and pay to get a desk, or hopefully not, but could be a coffee shop or something like that. It's good to have a requirement written out in your policy saying where this person needs to work. And that's something that a conversation that needs to happen before they start working, is finding out where are you going to work, and let's put in writing where that's going to be. A designated offsite workspace is best. Offsite, I mean by away from the employee's workplace employer. It could be in their house, or it could be in, like I was saying, one of those co-work spaces. Otherwise, you're opening yourself up to a couple concerns. IT security, for example, using public Wi-Fi while logged into your office's software or drives or whatever it might be. As a side note, you might make a note saying, do we have an IT policy concerning this? Something to be aware of. Is it already in our policies, in our handbook? Another concern would be confidential information. Is this an employee that's regularly accessing confidential information? And that can be a problem just for if they're out in public somewhere, like at a Starbucks. It could be as simple as someone just looking over their shoulder. As you can see in this stock image of the left-hand corner on the bottom, somebody can look over look over their shoulder, and all of a sudden they're seeing, somebody else's private information or your company's confidential information. We don't want that. So another aside, do you have a policy concerning proper handling of confidential information? Something else to be aware of and to make sure you have in your employee handbook when you're onboarding somebody. This policy is a good time to make it clear that the employee is responsible for their own safety. Working from home isn't necessarily a dangerous occupation, but you never know. Nothing surprises me anymore. Something you want to say would be, employer is not responsible for injuries that do not occur in the course and scope of their employment. If something does happen, the employee needs to follow workers' compensation procedures for reporting injuries. Something else would be employers are not liable for injuries to third parties, members of employees' family. I have 3 kids. They're always running around, throwing balls around, jumping, screaming, doing whatever. So I would, you would not want a situation where you have somebody in that person's family runs through their home office, trips over a cord, breaks an ankle, and all of a sudden you have that coming up or being reported to you and asking for some reimbursement or worse, a lawsuit. So good to have that in place. Another thing, it's not necessarily safety, but as an explanation of this picture that's here, employees are responsible for compliance with local zoning laws, or it could be, HOA requirements. This picture here, you can just imagine, it looks like an older historical home. Somebody has made an addition here that's does not quite fit, and I would imagine if you had an HOA, they would not be super happy about it. But I could see somebody during COVID-19 thinking, I'm going to add on this awesome home office. It's going to be great. It's going to be 2 stories. It's going to be a perfect place for me. Then all of a sudden you have a notice from your HOA saying, you can't do that. I need to tear it down. And then now this person is coming back to you asking to help them with their legal fees and fighting off these zoning law lawsuits. So it's a good idea to have something in there saying employee is the one responsible for compliance with local zoning laws. And as you know, this is something that I'm sure you all are already familiar with. It's always important to set clear expectations, especially with a remote work employee who you're not going to be seeing regularly. So you're going to want to go over some performance criteria, what you expect in terms of responsiveness, meeting attendance, availability, and a system for reporting hours. That's especially going to be important if they're an hourly employee. It'd be really good if you have some sort of software where they can put in that information. If a wage and hour issue does come up, that's going to be really important because part of the employer's defense is going to be that employee failed to report unscheduled hours worked through a reasonable reporting procedure. So that's just something to keep in mind. And then also you're going to want to have that statement that you'll probably see in a lot of your policies. Failing to abide by any of these can result in losing the remote work arrangement or termination of employment. And I have a little picture here. If you all have seen The Office, this is Pam. She's the receptionist. Michael is her boss, and it says, it's performance review day. Last year, my performance review started with Michael asking me what my hopes and dreams were, and ended with him telling me he could bench press 190 pounds. So I don't really know what to expect. We don't want that. We want clear expectations, and hopefully, this employee goes into this remote work situation knowing exactly what's expected of them, and we can keep in good communications, have some check-ins, and not going to have any surprises. Lastly, working out of state. You need to have some sort of policy in there requiring notice of location upon submitting requests, just saying where you're going to be, what state you're going to be in, and advance notice if they're going to be leaving the state. And then you're going to also say employer has discretion over whether to permit remote work from a different state. Just because they're requesting it doesn't mean you have to be okay with that. And then this has actually come up. Drafting, you're going to want a procedure and or an agreement for travel costs if there will be occasional commuting back to an on-site office. Because otherwise what you don't want is to ask them to come in for, maybe it's a monthly, maybe it's an annual meeting, and then all of a sudden you get an email with all their flights, reimbursement request and food and hotel and everything like that. You want everybody to be on the same page, so there's no surprises there. So that was the second half and the end of my presentation here. Just some provisions you're going to want to have in place, or you want to check that you already have them. Like I said at the beginning, hopefully my goal for this presentation just kind of sparking some things in your brain thinking, ooh, I should probably talk to in-house or outside legal counsel about that, or these are things I should probably talk to people about if they want to be working remotely, or here's some provisions I should make sure we have in our policy. Thanks again for having me. I greatly appreciate it. It was a pleasure presenting to you all today.
Thank you so much for being here with us. That was a great presentation. Lots of information. I'm sure we can all use because you can never review your employee manual often enough, in my opinion. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Do we have any questions?
Great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, with that, I just want to remind everyone we have our June meeting coming up in person again. In case you did miss that the first time, it will be June 12th. You'll be receiving the invite for that. If you are looking to get involved with Four Rivers SHRM, you can email any of our current board members, or you can email Four Rivers SHRM chapter at gmail.com. So if you have any questions, if you don't have any questions, then I suppose we will adjourn with a reminder that we will be adjourning to our after show, so the after party. So with that, thank you all for attending today. We appreciate you being members of Four Rivers SHRM. We'll give everyone a second to log off if they're not interested in the after party. And with that, we'll go ahead and get started. But I am going to have to admit, I missed the meeting where the topic was decided. So Ray, Catherine, Sarah, Marianne, someone, I'm going to need you to get us kicked off, please.
I don't have my notes. Ray, did you want to kick us off?
Sure. I was looking back at my notes. We decided to follow along as far as our topic today to go along with our session. How do you individually engage with your remote workforce? What are ideas that you have maybe used that you have found worked? Maybe share what hasn't worked for you all.
Thank you for remembering that. I was frantically looking through these pages.
Well, I'll share something that we have done, and it actually, we heard some very positive feedback, especially it's relevant with it kind of the end of Mental Health Awareness Month. Last year, we actually had every week just something small that we sent to all of our employees. It was really the first time we had recognized being Mental Health Awareness Month. And so the first thing was a little card, and it had our EAP information printed on it, but then it also had like resilience factors and breathing techniques that folded up and you could put in your wallet. Then we had another one that was like a candy, little bag of candy that actually had little sayings in there about mental health. And so we just had 3 or 4 little things that we had put together. And for our remote group, we actually mailed those to their individual homes. So they felt included as we made announcements and talked about these individual items for the week throughout that month. And that went over very, very well. In fact, we received a thank you note about it just because they felt like they were included in a an in-office event. So I think it's important if you are kind of hybrid or you have people in the office and out of office to make sure that you figure out how to make that participation. And if you're giving something away or doing something, how do you create or curate that for your remote workers?
Yeah, we've done that with several things where, we did a popcorn day where we were having popcorn in the office, and we actually sent popcorn to the homes of remote employees and to each remote office. Whenever we won Best Places to Work 2 years ago, we did a cookie party in the main office, and we actually had cookies delivered to all of our remote employees. So just trying to make sure people are included. And when we did the cookies, we actually made sure there was one employee that I know has some small children, and we made sure to include cookies enough so that everybody in the family had cookies, because otherwise I knew that that employee would not get a cookie.
Nice. That was a nice touch. We do some similar things. We have a quarterly gift that we send out, and my in-house counsel was on, but I think she dropped off after the presentation. But we do a quarterly gift. Our last gift, our workforce likes to connect with mission too. So we have what we call the Core Values Council, which is a group of 7 of us that you have to apply to be on the council. It has, charter and the whole thing. And we basically work together to do things for our fully remote staff. So we have History and Heritage Day, where we choose a history or heritage each month and do a message board post. So we're connecting that to our core values and recognizing everyone, making sure everyone feels included with holidays. And just different heritage observances. We do our quarterly gifts. So last gift, we sent something from the Women's Bean Project, which is a nonprofit that helps women get back on their feet. So we sent a box to everyone's home that had basically beans and cornbread and brownies that you could make yourself. It was really nice. We also stay connected with a virtual monthly lunch, where we play a game or we break into groups and just talk about things that are non-work related. And we have a monthly learning session too, where we also connect together, but we have a structured topic, something that's going on in project work, or maybe upcoming benefits or something like that, as a learning opportunity. So those are our main focus areas. When times are good, we also try to have an annual in-person retreat of some sort. Folks really enjoy that.
Yeah. Most of our employees who are truly remote work in our marketing department. So we just had all of them come here and meet as a department. So they came in from all over just to have several days of a retreat together. So I think that's important too, because then they get to connect with people from different departments while they're here. Anyone else have anything they'd like to throw out there as ideas of ways to connect with a remote workforce?
I think another thing is just reaching out, making sure that you keep those lines of communication open. Sometimes that's more meaningful than, sending a gift.
Completely agree. Completely agree. That's a great point, Sarah. And that's a low cost option, a no cost option in most instances. All right. Well, if no one else has anything to add, then I suppose we can call it for today. Thank you all for participating. I appreciate you.
You
Have a great day.